Imagine that you're a Union soldier in 1862. You were just shot in the arm during fighting at Fredericksburg, and you've drifted in and out of consciousness for the past few hours. Now you find yourself on a cot on a train. You tilt your head and see a woman, must be a nurse, in a bloomer ensemble. She takes an evaluation of your wound. "We won't have to amputate, you'll be better in no time." You manage a grateful smile and ask her name. She replies, "Dr. Mary Edwards Walker." Mary Edwards Walker was a remarkable woman who lived from 1832 to 1919. She had a multifaceted character, spreading herself across the medical field, the early feminism movement, and book writing, and she broke barriers in nearly everything she did. Walker was a doctor, a surgeon, dress reformer, suffragist, prohibitionist, author, and the only woman to receive the Medal of Honor, a distinction that she holds to this day. Mary Walker had a distinctly progressive upbringing, which contributed greatly to her unique makeup of ideals. She was born Mary Edwards Walker on November 26, 1832, to Vesta and Alva Walker. In her childhood, the Walkers lived in Oswego, New York, a sizable town situated on Lake Erie. Oswego was a part of New York's burned-over district, an area of religious fervor and progressive thought. The Walker household was no exception. It was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Mary and her sisters counterculturally went corsetless growing up. Her parents interchanged who worked in the fields and who worked in the house. During her childhood, a main source of inspiration for Mary was her father's medical library. Alva Walker had received preliminary training as a country doctor and possessed a small library on medical practices. Mary read these books from a young age and gained an interest in becoming a medical doctor herself. In 1853, at age 21, Walker enrolled in Syracuse Medical College to pursue a degree. This was particularly remarkable considering that Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to receive an American medical degree, had done so only 4 years earlier in 1849. While at Syracuse, Walker was the only female medical student. Her studies were aimed at homeopathic medicine, which emphasized natural healing processes. Despite being female, Walker received the same training as her male peers and graduated certified to treat female and male patients. After college, Walker had a brief but unhappy marriage to a fellow medical student from Syracuse. They divorced on account of his infidelity, and Walker earned a living through her 2 private medical practices in New York and Ohio. When Walker was 29 years old, the Civil War broke out. She quite rapidly decided to close her practice and attempted to enlist as a surgeon for the Union. Initially, Walker was denied admission on account of her gender, so she made a bold choice. Rather than waiting for the Army to hire her, she volunteered, joining the 52nd Ohio in the summer of 1861. Mary began as an assistant surgeon at a makeshift hospital in the U.S. Patent Office. Because she was a volunteer, she received no pay for her work. Walker then moved south to Virginia, where she dealt with the aftermath of the Battle of Fredericksburg. While she was there, it's likely that she worked with Clara Barton and Walt Whitman, who were serving concurrently as nurses. On another occasion, in Warrentown, Virginia, General Burnsides requested that Walker care for dozens of sick and dying soldiers holed up in an old house. Walker had no medical supplies and a limited staff, so she bought a wash basin from a local woman, tore up one of her own nightgowns for rags, and took the names of dying soldiers before transporting the injured back to Washington, D.C. Walker showed efficiency and action in dire straits during her time in Virginia. However, she would be put to the true test when she traveled to Georgia, following Sherman's march to the sea. Traveling through Georgia, Walker was under the command of Colonel McCook, who allowed her a significant amount of autonomy. Walker thrived and again proved her professionalism and quick thinking. She even broke barriers further when she agreed to serve Confederate civilians who were harmed by the war. Walker, ever the contrarian, did not give up her reform mindset while in the war. Firstly, she created her own uniform based on reform dress. Walker wore this personalized uniform all through the war, namely for the sake of cleanliness and practicality. Finally, Walker brought about change by creating the Women's Relief Organization. Walker had been frustrated by the fact that women visiting D.C. in search of their male relatives in the military had no respectable places to stay. She rented a house across from Ford's Theater, gathered materials, and established contacts around the city to assist women in reconnecting with loved ones. Returning now to 1864, when Walker was traveling with Colonel McCook in Georgia. While she was out on an errand one morning, Walker was captured by 2 men and brought to Castle Thunder prisoner of war camp. In an effort to keep up morale, Walker flew a small U.S. flag inside her cell. Yet Walker suffered terrible physical consequences. Her weight dropped, she developed chronic bronchitis, and damaged her eyesight. She was only 32 during her time there, but her body left much older. Walker was exchanged in a prisoner of war swap 4 months after her entry in 1864. After her time at Castle Thunder, Walker took a position as surgeon in charge at the Louisville Female Military Prison. Walker was reassigned briefly at the end of the war to an orphan asylum and refugee home in Clarksville, Tennessee. Then one day, she received a simple letter of dismissal. Walker packed her bags. Her Civil War service was finished. In 1865, after Walker left the Army, she received a far more pleasant communication from the federal government. She was to be awarded the Medal of Honor for her service and bravery. Walker took this distinction to heart and wore her medal daily for the rest of her life. After the war, Walker was restless. She took a speaking tour through England in 1866 and 67, where she touted the benefits of her reform dress. Walker had worn a reform-style dress since her time in medical school and described it as such. The linen is made with high neck and loose waist, and whole drawers with long sleeves and wristbands attached. The drawers are folded over the ankles and the stockings adjusted over the drawers, thus keeping the ankles warm and also keeping the stockings arranged without elastics or other bands. The pants are made like men's and are either buttoned to the waist of the undersuit or are arranged with the usual suspenders. The dress is made to hang free of the body, the waist and skirt of one piece like a sack coat and falling to the knees. This simple setup contrasted greatly from the styles of the day, which relied on a plethora of draped fabrics. Walker jokingly noted that wearing this much fabric could be qualified as hauling dry goods, saying that there are plenty of horses, oxen, and mules that can be employed for the purpose. Beyond dress reform, Walker also supported many other movements for the advancement of women. She supported women's suffrage, although she stated that women already had the right to vote based on a unique interpretation of the 15th Amendment. Walker also supported prohibition. She believed, as many of her contemporaries did, that drinking led to the alcoholism that broke families apart. Walker herself never drank and encouraged others to do likewise. Walker found an outlet for many of her political ideas in her books. Hit, which was published in 1871, and Unmasked, or The Science of Immorality, which was published in 1878. In the latter, Walker discussed such taboo topics as menstruation, STDs, rape, even within marriage, and double standards. Afterwards, public opinion deemed Walker as exceedingly radical. Even after the war, Walker continued her advocacy for change and reform. She compiled stories from Civil War nurses and sent them to Washington, D.C. when she learned that they were not receiving adequate pensions. Walker advocated for her own pensions as well. Throughout the war, Walker received only $766 for her services, in spite of the fact that she had a paid position after 1864. This amount translates to only $13,000 in today's money. Walker was denied disability benefits even though she had developed health complications while at Castle Thunder. Walker never backed down from addressing the federal government's wrongs, even when it continually turned her away. As previously mentioned, Walker wore her Medal of Honor daily. In 1916, her honor was revoked because Congress redefined the standards for who could be a recipient. The new qualification of involvement in combat with the enemy ruled out Walker. Yet she refused to return her medal and even appealed to Congress regarding the medal in 1919, the same year that she died. Walker died in her hometown of Oswego, New York, at the age of 86. Yet Mary's story was not yet done. In the 1970s, her great-grandniece, Anne Walker, began speaking with federal workers, trying to get Mary's Medal of Honor reinstated. After years of red tape and library research, Mary's Medal of Honor status was returned by President Jimmy Carter in 1977. Mary Walker truly broke barriers in everything that she did. She pursued a medical degree at a time when very few female medical doctors existed. She became a surgeon in the Civil War despite persistent challengers who doubted her medical skills. She was a dress reformer who paved the way for healthier styles for women. In everything that she did, she was a tenacious reformer who always pushed for what was right, even if it meant breaking the mold. In a letter to a good friend, Mary wrote, "No one knows, or will ever know, what it has cost me to live up to my principles, but I have done it, and I am not sorry for it."